Roughly 370 million years ago, on the warm, muddy edge of a shallow sea, a heavy-bodied creature drags itself half out of the water. It is not quite a fish, and not yet anything like us. Something in between, with a broad, flat head, eyes set high on top, gulping air in slow and labored breaths. It presses a thick, fleshy limb down into the silt and heaves its weight forward, then plants another, cutting shallow grooves through the mud. Behind it trails a line of the first clumsy footprints ever pressed into land. Kneel down at the water's edge and count the marks left in a single one of them. You expect 5. You find 8. 8 slender toes fanning out from one ancient paw at the very dawn of life on land, and every hand that would ever come after it, including the one resting on your screen right now, was shaped from a limb just like this. We like to imagine 5 as a kind of perfect number, as if nature measured the ideal hand and handed it out to everyone. It did not. 5 was never aimed at, never chosen, never best. The number at the end of your arm is not a design at all. It is an accident that got stuck. Long ago, the count of fingers was still loose and shifting, and then it froze. And once it froze, it could only ever shrink, never grow back. To understand why, we are not going to list off functions or read out statistics. We are going to do 2 things. Walk back to the muddy world where the number was still up for grabs, and then watch, step by step, how a hand is actually built, because that is where the real answer hides. And it hides inside you, because your own hands were made by the very same process. 2 questions, then. Why did the first hands carry more fingers than yours, and then lose them? And once the count settled on 5, why has almost nothing on earth, not the bat, not the horse, not the whale, not you, ever grown a true 6th? Hold them both. The answer runs from a drying shoreline all the way into the first weeks of your own life, before you were ever born. Begin before fingers existed at all. In the warm, crowded shallows of that ancient world lived fish you would barely recognize. Thick-bodied, slow, their fins held out on stubby lobes of muscle and bone. Look inside one of those lobes, and a shiver of recognition runs through you. A single thick bone at the base, then 2 lying side by side, then a spray of little ones near the edge. That is your own arm. 1 bone above the elbow, 2 below it, a scatter at the wrist. The hand was never invented from scratch. It was already sketched inside a fin, waiting for a reason to finish itself. In shallows that were forever warming, drying, and choking with weeds, a fin that could bend and prop against the mud let its owner haul toward the next pool, gulp air, escape the crush. Those bony lobes were pushed into new work, generation after generation. Slowly, the fin became a limb, and the little spray of bones at its edge began to matter. And here is the part almost everyone forgets. When those first limbs finally pressed down onto land, the number of toes was still wandering. One early creature spread 8 toes across the mud. Another left 7. Another 6. There was no rule yet, only a rough, unfinished hand trying out different counts on different bodies. Then, across long, dark stretches of time, the high numbers simply vanished. The creatures that carried 6, 7, and 8 toes died away or left no lasting line, and the survivors, the ancestors of every frog, lizard, bird, and beast to come, all happened to carry 5 or fewer. Nothing declared 5 the winner. It was the number left standing when the others fell. From that muddy moment on, 5 became the starting hand dealt to every backboned animal that would ever walk on land, including, in time, you. But that only pushes the mystery deeper. Why did the count freeze at all? And why can it fall yet never climb back? To see it, you have to watch a hand being made. And the strange thing is, you can. Because it still happens in every unborn child the same ancient way. Picture a human embryo, only a few weeks old. Where a hand will be, there is no hand yet. Only a tiny flat paddle of tissue, smooth along its edge, without a single finger. The fingers are not added one at a time, like beads on a string. They are carved out of that paddle all at once. A signal seeps across the little paddle, from the edge that will become your pinky toward the edge that will become your thumb. And as it spreads, it breaks into bands, stripes that say, make a finger here, split by gaps that say, leave a notch. Where the bands fall, digits rise. Where the gaps fall, the tissue between your fingers melts away. Count the bands the paddle settles into, and you have counted the fingers. In those first experimenting creatures, the striping was still shaky, and a paddle might break into 6 or 7 or 8. But the pattern that steadied and won laid down 5 bands cleanly in body after body. And then the trap closed. Every bone, tendon, nerve, and vessel of the growing hand was built to thread through those 5 bands. The muscles learned to pull on 5. The nerves learned to reach 5. The whole living architecture of the limb wrapped itself around the number, until adding a 6th band no longer meant 1 extra finger. It meant tearing up the plan for the entire hand. That is why the door only swings one way. Losing a finger is easy. Shrink a band, and the horse rises onto a single toe. The bird folds 3 into a wing. But growing a true new one means rebuilding everything at once, and that almost never survives. Look at the giant panda, pressing a bamboo stalk against what looks for all the world like a 6th finger. Trace the bone inside and the trick gives itself away. It is no finger at all, just a small wrist bone swollen into a pad. Even the panda, which would plainly love a real 6th finger, could not grow one. So evolution bent a spare bone into a fake instead. The panda's thumb is not proof that 6 is possible. It is proof of how tightly 5 is locked. So here, at last, is the honest answer to why you have 5 fingers. Not because 5 is perfect, it is not, and nothing ever weighted against 6 and chose. You have 5 because, in a handful of half-drowned creatures crawling through the mud, the recipe for building a hand happened to steady on 5 bands. And that number worked well enough to keep enough digits to grip and to prop without the crowding that came with more. It was a good enough accident, and then it sank so deep into the way a limb grows that no later animal could ever dig it back out. Every ancestor between that shoreline and your mother's womb inherited the same recipe and ran it again, unbroken, for hundreds of millions of years. And a few weeks before you were born, it ran once more inside you, seeping across 2 tiny paddles and settling, as it always does, into 5. Go back one last time to that creature at the water's edge, its 8 toes sunk in the silt, its hand still an open question. Somewhere in the long dark after it, the question quietly closed. The count fell to 5 and stuck. And that frozen answer was copied straight down the line into the hand you are holding up right now. Your 5 fingers are not the mark of a perfect design. They are the fossil of an accident, still being reprinted in every one of us. So the next time you spread your hand, look at it a moment longer. You are holding one of the oldest unbroken habits on earth, a number chosen by no one, fixed in the mud, and never overturned since. Almost nobody ever stops to ask why it is 5. If you like uncovering the ancient accidents still running quietly inside your body, stay with me. There are far more of them than you would ever guess.